following content examines a real criminal case involving violence and loss of life. Out of respect for the victims and their families, viewer discretion is strongly advised.
Come in here. Laura, if you're listening, it doesn't matter what's happened. It doesn't matter what type of trouble. There's nothing we can't fix together.
September 13th, 2017. Noon. Damascus, Maryland. A Montgomery County search and rescue team pushes deeper into a remote farm property. They're following tire tracks, fresh tracks, and the cadaver dogs won't stop pulling toward a wooded clearing ahead. What they find in that shallow grave will confirm a family's worst nightmare, and expose a secret so calculated, so methodical, that even the detectives who've been tracking this case for 9 days can barely comprehend it. The man who stood before cameras just 2 days ago, tearfully begging for his girlfriend's safe return, had already buried her body in the exact spot where investigators now stand. Welcome to True Crime Mind Studio. Tonight we explore a horror so sinister, it's etched in your memory forever. If you're ready to dive deep into cases that expose the darkest corners of human deception, hit that subscribe button, smash the like, share this video, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from and if you've heard of this case before. Now, let's get into it. To understand how we arrived at that moment in the woods, we need to go back to where the story really begins. Because the woman buried in that shallow grave wasn't just a victim. She was a beloved teacher, a daughter, an expectant mother. And the man who put her there had spent years perfecting the art of deception. September 5th, 2017. 8 days before police would make their grim discovery. It's the first day of the school year at Wilde Lake High School in Columbia, Maryland. Laura Wallen's students waited in her classroom. Their beloved social studies teacher, named Teacher of the Year just 1 year earlier, never arrived. She hadn't called in sick, hadn't requested a substitute. She had simply vanished. Laura Wallen was 31 years old. Born and raised in the suburbs of Montgomery County, Maryland, she had dedicated her life to education. Those who knew her described a woman who led with compassion and believed in the potential of every student who walked through her door. Her father, Mark Wallen, would later tell reporters that Laura considered herself a work in progress. She had an ability to see the amazing potential in everyone around her. It was the hallmark of her teaching career. In the summer of 2017, Laura had every reason to be excited. A new school year was approaching, but there was something else. She was 4 months pregnant, expecting a baby boy she planned to name Reed. The father was her boyfriend of several years, Tyler Tessier. They had known each other since 2010. Their relationship had been tumultuous, marked by frequent breakups and reconciliations. But to Laura's family, it seemed they had finally found stability. What Laura didn't know was that Tyler Tessier was living a double life. And the secret he was hiding? It wasn't just an affair. It was an entire second existence. Another woman, another promise, another lie so calculated that when the truth finally emerged, even seasoned detectives would struggle to comprehend the depth of his deception. But first, he needed to make sure Laura never told anyone. Tyler Tessier didn't just lie. He constructed entire realities, 2 separate worlds that could never intersect. Until Laura's pregnancy forced everything into collision. Tyler Tessier lived in Damascus, Maryland, a small community about 30 miles northwest of Washington, D.C. To all outward appearances, he was Laura's devoted partner. But investigators would later discover that for years, Tessier had been engaged to another woman. A relationship that had lasted 10 years. The 2 women had no idea the other existed. When Laura became pregnant, she told her family. Her father, Mark, concerned about their on and off relationship, asked Tessier directly about his intentions. According to Mark Wallen, Tessier showed him an engagement ring and said he planned to propose to Laura. He assured Mark he would take care of her. Mark Wallen believed him. Laura believed him. But there was something Mark couldn't have known in that moment. The ring Tyler showed Laura's father? It was never meant for Laura. Within weeks, Tessier would use that exact same ring to propose to the other woman. She said yes, and they set a wedding date. The ceremony was scheduled for October 2017, just 1 month after Laura's baby was due to be born. In late August 2017, Laura began to suspect something was wrong. She discovered the existence of Tessier's fiancé. Rather than confront him immediately, Laura reached out directly to the other woman. She sent a text message. She wasn't looking for a confrontation, she wrote. She wanted to talk, woman to woman, about what was happening. When the other woman showed Tyler the message, his response was chilling. 6 days before Laura disappeared, Tessier sent a text to his fiancée. Quote, "I could literally kill her for what she's done." On September 1st, 2017, Laura's family saw her for the last time. 24 hours later, Laura would send her sister a photograph, an open field, trees in the distance, and a message that would haunt investigators for days. Because Tyler Tessier had told her they were going on an adventure. What Laura didn't realize was that she was being driven to her own grave, and she would never leave that field alive. September 2nd would be the day everything ended for Laura Wallen. But Tyler Tessier's plan was just beginning, and for the next 72 hours, he would send text messages from her phone, dispose of evidence, and prepare for the performance of his life. September 2nd, 2017, 8:30 p.m. Surveillance cameras at a Safeway grocery store in Olney captured Laura Wallen and Tyler Tessier making a purchase together. It would be the last time anyone aside from Tessier would see Laura alive. Later that evening, Laura sent a text message to her sister. Quote, "Tyler has me on an adventure in the country. Don't know why I'm here, but it's for something." She included a photograph, an open field, trees in the distance. She never explained what that something was, and she would never send another message again. Investigators believe Laura Wallen was killed the following day, September 3rd, shot in the back of the head. Her body was buried in a shallow grave on a remote farm in Damascus. On September 4th, Laura's family received text messages from her phone, but Laura wasn't the one sending them. Tyler Tessier had taken her phone and was sending messages, pretending to be her. When questioned by police, he would later admit to doing this. On that same day, late at night, Tessier sent a text to an acquaintance. He needed a ride to Baltimore, he wrote. He needed help to, quote, "clean up a mess." The acquaintance declined. September 5th, the first day of school. Laura Wallen didn't show up for work. She hadn't requested a substitute. Her students waited. Her colleagues grew concerned. And her family immediately knew something was terribly wrong. Laura's sister called police. Within hours, a missing persons investigation was underway. Detectives began interviewing everyone who knew Laura, including her boyfriend. Tyler Tessier sat across from detectives and told his story. But there was a problem. Every time he opened his mouth, a different version came out. And with each interview, the inconsistencies grew. Police knew they were dealing with a liar. What they didn't know yet was whether they were dealing with a killer. But they were about to find out. And the evidence they'd uncover would lead them to make a decision that would shock the entire community. While hundreds of volunteers searched fields and forests for Laura Wallen, detectives were watching one person more closely than anyone else. And they were about to do something unprecedented. Something that would either break their case wide open or give a potential murderer exactly what he wanted: a public stage. Laura's sister reported her missing on September 5th. Within hours, the Montgomery County Police Department launched an investigation. Laura's family, friends, students, and community members distributed flyers throughout Howard and Montgomery counties. Her face, with the word "missing" in bold red letters, appeared on telephone poles, in store windows, and across social media. On September 7th, police discovered Laura's 2011 black Ford Escape in the parking lot of an apartment complex in Columbia, directly across the highway from Wilde Lake High School. The front license plate had been removed. Inside a dumpster at the complex, investigators found Laura's driver's license and iPhone. Both had been discarded there. Behind the scenes, detectives were piecing together a disturbing picture. Tyler Tessier had already been interviewed multiple times, and each time his story changed. He admitted to driving Laura's car to the apartment complex. He admitted to throwing away her license and phone. But he insisted he had no idea where Laura was. Police obtained the photograph Laura had sent to her sister on September 2nd. The open field, the trees. Tech analysts began working to determine the location, and investigators discovered something else. Tyler Tessier had been visiting a specific rural area in Damascus multiple times since Laura went missing. On September 11th, 6 days after Laura was reported missing, her family held a press conference. They offered a $25,000 reward for information leading to her safe return. Laura's parents were there, devastated, pleading for their daughter's life. And sitting beside them, holding Laura's mother's hand, was Tyler Tessier. He cried. He trembled. His voice broke. He held the hands of Laura's parents, these people who trusted him, who believed in him. He said, quote, "Laura, if you're listening, it doesn't matter what's happened. It doesn't matter what type of trouble. There is nothing we can't fix together, myself and your family. If somebody has her, please understand that you've taken away a huge person in so many people's lives." The media coverage was extensive. The public rallied. The search intensified. Everyone who watched believed they had just witnessed a boyfriend's desperate plea for his missing girlfriend. But what the public didn't know, what even Tyler Tessier's own parents didn't know as they watched him on television, was that at that exact moment, Montgomery County detectives were sitting in an operations room watching the same press conference. Not as observers, as investigators, because Tyler Tessier was already their prime suspect. Police Chief Tom Manger would later explain that allowing Tessier to attend the press conference was a calculated investigative strategy, done with the full knowledge and approval of Laura's family. Detectives wanted to see exactly what he would say, how he would perform, what lies he would tell. While Tyler Tessier sat beside Laura's mother, holding her hand, telling the cameras he didn't know where Laura was, detectives knew he was lying. They had already identified inconsistencies in his statements. They had already found the photograph location, and they were already planning to obtain a search warrant for a specific property in Damascus. 2 days after that press conference, on September 13th, the search team arrived at the farm where we began this story. The cadaver dogs had caught a scent. Their handlers could barely hold them back as they pulled toward a specific spot in the woods. Fresh tire tracks led directly to the location, and when the search team finally reached the clearing, they found exactly what Tyler Tessier had been hiding, exactly what he had driven past multiple times in the days after Laura disappeared, checking, making sure his secret stayed buried. The press conference had been 2 days earlier. Tyler Tessier had looked into the cameras and begged for Laura's safe return, and at that very moment her body was lying here, in this field, in this shallow grave. His time was up. The discovery of Laura Wallen's body would answer one question that had haunted her family for 9 days. But it would open another that would consume investigators for the next year. How far would Tyler Tessier go to protect his lies? September 13th, 2017. Noon. A Montgomery County police search and rescue team, accompanied by cadaver dogs, arrived at a large farm property along Price's Distillery Road in Damascus. The property owner had no connection to the case, but the photograph Laura sent to her sister matched this location. The dogs immediately began pulling their handlers toward a specific area, following tire tracks, fresh tracks that led into a wooded section of the property. The team moved quickly, and then, in a small clearing, they stopped. Disturbed earth, a shallow depression, and protruding from the soil, clothing. They had found Laura Wallen. The scene was photographed. Evidence was collected. And less than 6 hours later, at 5:30 that evening, Tyler Tessier was arrested at his home in Damascus. He was charged with first-degree murder, altering physical evidence, and making false statements to police. The autopsy would later confirm what investigators suspected. Laura had been shot in the back of the head. A single gunshot wound, execution style. Under Maryland law, Tessier could not be charged for the death of Laura's unborn child. At 13 weeks gestation, the The fetus was not considered viable independent of the mother. He received only one murder charge. At his bond hearing the following day, the judge looked directly at Tessier and said, quote, "I do think that you are a danger to the community." He was denied bail and held without bond until trial. Laura's father, Mark Wallen, spoke outside the courthouse. His voice was steady, but his words cut like a blade. Quote, "He is a monster. He's a liar. And it was absolutely the hardest thing my wife could do, to sit next to him at that press conference and hold his hand."
He is a monster, and he is a liar.
Tyler Tessier would spend the next 11 months behind bars. Awaiting trial, prosecutors built their case. The evidence was overwhelming. Surveillance footage, text messages, his own admissions to police about disposing of evidence. The trial date was set for September 6, 2018, exactly 1 year and 1 day after Laura's body was found. Jury selection proceeded smoothly. 12 citizens were chosen. Both sides were ready. Opening statements were scheduled for 9:30 a.m. Laura's family prepared themselves for 3 weeks of testimony, evidence, and trauma. They would finally get to hear the full truth, finally get justice. But Tyler Tessier had one final move to make, one last act of control. And when the sun rose on September 6, 2018, he would ensure that Laura's family never heard him answer for what he'd done, because he knew what was coming. He'd seen the evidence. He'd read the witness statements. He knew he'd be found guilty, and he wasn't going to let that happen. Before we reach that final morning, there's one more moment that needs to be understood, because even in death, Laura Wallen continued to touch lives, and her family would fight to ensure her legacy meant something more than just another victim of violence. On September 30, 2017, Laura Wallen and her unborn son Reed were laid to rest at the Lutheran Church of St. Andrew in Silver Spring, Maryland. 3 overflow areas were required to accommodate the hundreds of people who came to pay their respects. Laura's father told mourners that Laura considered herself a work in progress, but she could find the amazing potential in anyone and everyone. It was the hallmark of her teaching career. Quote, "Laura, in her own way, has changed many lives for the better." For nearly a year, Tyler Tessier sat in a Montgomery County jail cell. His trial was scheduled for September 6, 2018. Prosecutors spent months building their case. They had surveillance footage placing him and Laura together the night she disappeared. They had his text messages, including the threat to kill her. They had his conflicting statements to police. They had his admission to disposing of evidence. Jury selection took place over 2 days. 12 citizens were chosen. Opening statements were scheduled for 9:30 a.m. on September 6. The trial was expected to last 3 weeks. Laura's family prepared themselves for the ordeal ahead. To see crime scene photographs, to hear how their daughter died, to sit in the same room as the man who killed her. September 6, 2018. 4 a.m. Tyler Tessier woke in his cell at the Montgomery County Correctional Facility in Clarksburg. This was routine. On trial days, inmates wake early to prepare for transport to court. At 4:15, he showered. Alone. In a single cell. At 4:36, a guard checked on him. He was seen getting dressed. At 4:45, breakfast was delivered to his cell. He refused it. At 4:55 a.m., during the next routine check, a guard looked into Tyler Tessier's cell and found him hanging from a bedsheet. Efforts were made to revive him. At 5:32 a.m., he was pronounced dead. 4 hours later, at 9:30 a.m., Circuit Judge Michael Mason entered the courtroom. Prosecutors were ready. The defense was ready. Jurors sat waiting. Laura's family sat in the front row, steeling themselves. Judge Mason had instructed the jury not to watch or read local news. They had no idea what had happened that morning. The judge said, quote, "I expect what I'm about to tell you will come as a shock. There's no easy way to tell you this, but the defendant was found dead in his cell at 5 o'clock this morning. Apparently a suicide, so there will be no trial." Some jurors gasped. Others sat in stunned silence. Laura's family, who had waited nearly a year for this day, watched as the courtroom emptied. No trial. No testimony. No verdict. No accountability. In an unprecedented move, Montgomery County State's Attorney John McCarthy made a decision. If the public couldn't hear the evidence in a courtroom, they would hear it at a press conference. That afternoon, with Laura's family standing beside him, he presented the case they had prepared for trial. He showed the text messages, the threats, the lies. He revealed that Tessier had maintained dual relationships with two women for years. He explained that Laura had reached out to the other woman just days before she was killed, wanting to tell her about the pregnancy. McCarthy said, quote, "We were robbed this morning of the opportunity to allow the public to know the true nature and details of this crime. To Tyler Tessier, lying was like breathing. He lied about everything." McCarthy called Tessier a psychopath. He revealed that during one police interview, Tessier had admitted to shooting Laura, though that confession would have been excluded at trial for legal reasons. 5 suicide notes were found in Tessier's cell, stacked on top of his bunk bed. The identities of the recipients and the contents of the letters have never been made public. But McCarthy confirmed one critical detail. None of the letters acknowledged killing Laura Wallen. Even in death, Tyler Tessier offered no confession, no apology, no truth. Laura's brother-in-law, John Conti, addressed the cameras with words meant for a man who could no longer hear them. Quote, "He stood our family up for the last time today." In the aftermath, Laura's family pushed for a change to Maryland law. They called it Laura and Reed's Law. It would allow prosecutors to charge suspects with murder for the death of an unborn child, regardless of the age of the fetus. They wanted to ensure that what happened to Reed would not be forgotten. Laura Wallen's classroom at Wilde Lake High School stands as a reminder of the life cut short. A teacher who believed in potential. A woman who led with compassion. A mother who never got to meet her son. She was 31 years old. Thank you for watching True Crime Mind Studio. If this case moved you, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who appreciates deep dive true crime investigations, and let us know in the comments what you think about this case. We cover cases that go beyond the headlines, cases that ask difficult questions about justice, deception, and the human capacity for both good and evil. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss our next investigation. Until next time, stay curious, stay compassionate, and remember, the truth always matters.